नमस्ते सबैजनालाई कंगारू एजुकेसन फाउन्डेसनको फेसबुक लाइभ सेसनमा जोडिनु भएको सबैलाई मेरो स्वागत छ। मेरो नाम सुशन घिमिरे, म कंगारू एजुकेसन फाउन्डेसनमा कार्यरत छु। कंगारू एजुकेसन फाउन्डेसनले कोभिड-19 पछि परेको प्रभावको बारेमा स्टुडेन्ट र प्यारेन्ट्सहरूको लागि एउटा इन्फर्मेटिभ सेसन हप्तामा एकचोटि गरिरहेको छ। तर यो हप्ता हामीले दुईटा सेसन गरिरहेका छौँ। आजको यो सेसनमा चाहिँ हामीले युके को एजुकेसनमा कोभिड-19ले परेको प्रभाव, स्टुडेन्टहरूले कस्तो कस्तो कुरामा ख्याल गर्नुपर्छ भन्ने कुराहरूको लागि सल्लाह सहितको एउटा हाम्रो इन्फर्मेटिभ प्याकेज लिएर आएको छु। आजको यो सेसनमा मलाई चाहिँ साथ दिनको लागि Sian Healy from she is our director of strategic partnership from UK. She is based in UK. Sian ले मलाई चाहिँ साथ दिनुहुन्छ। Welcome, Sian, to the session.
Hello, thank you. Very pleased to be here today.
How is everything in UK at the moment, Sian?
Yeah, no, we're all okay here in the UK. I think we started our lockdown about 14 weeks ago, and gradually we are being given more and more freedoms. So the government announced this week that from the 4th of July, most of the restaurants, pubs, cinemas, cafes, all the things that kind of make, you know, your social life a bit more interesting will all reopen from next Saturday. And we already have quite a lot of restrictions relaxed. So we can go to more shops now. We can start to meet with our friends and family. So I think we're all feeling quite positive. We have a sort of level of 5 threat levels, I guess, for coronavirus. And at the moment, we've gone from a level 4 down to a level 3. So we are moving in the right direction. There's still some restrictions, but they are, I think, quite reasonable. So people are asked to maintain distance from one another. At the moment, it's 2 meters, but from next Saturday, it will be 1 meter. And we're also being asked to wear face masks if we travel on public transport, or also if you're just in shops and things like that. So I think gradually we're sort of getting used to this slightly different way of life, but I think people feel quite positive. The sun's come out, which also really helps. Yeah, we're all getting used to this new way of living at the moment. And I guess probably like most of you in Nepal as well, very similar situation.
Oh, that's great to know, Sian, because the situation was really scary in the UK, but it's good to know that the cases has been dropping and the lockdown has been eased. So I want to know more about what are the universities are doing during this crisis and how they are managing this situation, Sian.
Yeah, so I'm sure, as you can imagine, when this all started, this is something completely unprecedented for UK universities. It's not something that, well, probably for most of us in the world, we haven't had to deal with a pandemic before. So at the end of March, all UK universities closed their campuses for face-to-face teaching. And to date, all of the universities are continuing at the moment to deliver online learning, but they're all starting to think about, much like the rest of the country, how they can begin to open up and adjust to this new way of living. And one thing that's really going to help that is this change from the 2 meter social distancing to the 1 meter social distancing, because that does then make it a little bit easier for universities to start delivering on campus. So when we think about September, and I'm sure for many of you, you're starting to think about, you know, if you are considering the UK, how will you be able to come and study here, and how will you be able to be on campus? And it does vary from university to university, but broadly speaking, most universities hope to at least be able to offer some face-to-face teaching. Now, it will be different to how it's been in the past. So, for example, you know, you might have imagined when you come to the UK for university, these huge lecture theatres full of students. And that's one way that we learn. But this year, obviously, with social distancing, that will be a little bit more difficult. So it's likely that quite a lot of universities will choose to do those large lectures online. But what you will still have is other face-to-face teaching. So you might find that some of your smaller seminar groups, which is where a seminar group in the UK is where you spend time with a small group of classmates really talking about what you've learned in the lecture. And that's really where you get a better understanding of your subject. And it's much easier to run those type of classes face-to-face because they are smaller groups. So you can more easily employ social distancing. Also things like perhaps asking people to wear face masks. That may be the case in some universities. You might also find that for some of the practical subjects, they'll just tweak the way in which they run classes. So maybe for lab classes, they might sort of, rather than having an hour every day, you might have that bunched together in a longer session, but meaning that more students can get in and use the labs in any given week. So I think there's a range of things and sort of processes that universities are putting in place to make sure that when September comes, they are able to run, hopefully, a sort of blended learning model for most students. And they're also sort of offering more staggered start dates for students as well. And we can talk about that now, or perhaps we can come back to that in a moment. Sushan, I'll leave that with you.
Yeah, that's really good to know. Some of the students and parents, they ask us a lot of questions around what is the quarantine measures and how this will affect to the students who will be arriving in UK. Could you please tell us something about the quarantine measures?
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, at the beginning of June, the government introduced a 14-day quarantine for anybody who is arriving into the UK, with some small exceptions. Now, this means that when you arrive to the UK, at the moment, you need to, once you arrive, you register where you're going to be staying, and you need to remain in that place for 14 days without leaving the residence. And after that time, you're then free to sort of carry on. The reason for that is to give you 14 days in case you did develop any symptoms. You would then be able to self-isolate and make sure you keep yourself safe and keep everybody else safe. Now, what I would say with all of these rules and regulations, the government has a commitment, and it's actually written into sort of, I guess, an agreement, that they will review any decisions they make every 3 to 4 weeks. So although this is in place at the moment, obviously by September, we're not sure what that will look like and whether that quarantine will still exist. However, for the moment, UK universities are sort of planning around the fact that it might still be there, and there are different things in place to support students. For example, some universities may assist students in getting food and different things that they'll need when they first arrive in the UK for that 14-day period. Roehampton University, one of the Kangaroo partners, they are offering free 2-week accommodation to international students if they do need to quarantine, so to make sure for that 14-day period they are supported and looked after. So it varies across the board, but I would say try not to worry too much about that if you can, because it is changing all the time. And I'm sure, much like in Nepal and other parts of the world, it's quite a fluid situation. So it could well be that if the numbers continue to fall, perhaps the quarantine won't be in place, or perhaps there'll be some other arrangement for international students. So it's sort of changing all the time, but I think keep positive, and certainly it's something that UK universities are aware of, and given so many international students are coming from overseas, are coming to study in the UK, it's something that they'll certainly be mindful of when putting things in place for September.
There is a lot of questions around what will happen to online studies if the student studies outside of UK, offshore. Can they go to UK after the border is open and they can continue the program?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so most universities are offering quite a lot of flexibility for the coming academic year. So typically in the UK, undergraduate and postgraduate programs start around middle to the end of September. But this year, again, it varies from university to university. So you do need to sort of check on their website with the regular updates. But at the moment, universities are looking at staggered starts. So if for some reason you can't arrive at the end of September, perhaps you're still waiting for your visa, or you need to observe the 2-week quarantine, then there'll be options to sort of start your program a little bit later. Many of the postgraduate programs are now also being offered as a January start date, so January 2021, to give students a bit more time to arrive in the UK. And because there's this blended learning approach, it does mean that if you are coming to the UK a little bit later than you anticipated, you can still start your program offshore and then continue your program onshore. And for those of you who are perhaps thinking about the post-study work visa, there's also some flexibility around that as well. So as long as you are in the UK on your program by April 2021, then you'd still be eligible for that. But again, with anything to do with those types of regulations, it's always a good idea to check with the team at Kangaroo as to any updates as and when they happen.
Okay, that's great to know. And some of the students, they want to go to, as soon as possible to the UK, and they're looking for September intake. Is it possible to study face-to-face on campus on September intake for some universities?
Yeah, so I think as a face-to-face teaching, so it won't all be face-to-face simply because of the sort of difficulties in social distancing in a large lecture theatre, but you'd still have opportunities for face-to-face learning through seminar groups and through social interactions as well on campus. So lots of the universities are offering sort of opportunities for social connections between students. So there will still be that face-to-face element. So you won't be sort of sitting in a room on your own, on your computer. There will still be some element of face-to-face, but it does vary from university to university. And as I say, I think quite a lot could still change and develop in the next few months as we move forward in removing some of those restrictions. But I think the general message is, if you're coming to the UK, you will still get some of that face-to-face and what we call blended learning, so a mix of some online and some face-to-face teaching. In the majority, I think around 97% of the 100 universities that have been surveyed suggest that they will be offering some form of blended learning. So yes, I know that when you come overseas, one of the things you really want to experience, I guess, is actually being in that room with your teachers. So I hope that can still continue, assuming, of course, that everything remains pretty much as it is now in terms of infection rates.
Okay, that's good, Sian. So I have a couple of updates for our students. Some of the questions and inquiries we're getting is around the visa application centers and post-study work visa, and even the immigration surcharge sort of things. So I would like to clarify those things. So visa application in Nepal is currently closed for UK visa applications. So you are not able to do the biometric because the visa application center is closed. So your visa application will not be complete. So and there's another update from regarding the NHS immigration surcharge is currently like £400, I think, but from October 2020 it will be increased to 470 IPT. So student will be advised to take that note as well. So there will be an increase in immigration surcharge. And there is a lot of confusion regarding the post-study work visa. Although there are some, there's still not 100% clarity on those things, but the government, UK government, is quite clear that there will be a post-study work right for those students from summer 2021. For example, if you are a student in UK and you studied in 2019-20 and you are graduated in summer 2021, you will be eligible for post-study work visa. However, if you studied in 2018-19 for, let's say, 1 year master's course, let's say MBA, and you're graduated before summer 2021, you're not eligible for post-study work visa. Okay, that's the update. And I would like to ask you a few questions regarding the Kangaroo education universities that we represent, and what universities we recently added in our portfolio, Sam, and if you can tell us something about the courses that the university is offering, and probably the scholarship with some of the universities that they can offer.
Okay, so I'm going to talk today about two of our recent partnerships that we now have in the UK, which is with Brunel University and Roehampton University. And these are both universities in Greater London. So when we talk about Greater London, we mean on the edge of London. So the perfect location if you want to enjoy everything that London has to offer. So all of the theatres, culture, restaurants, you know, the famous sites that you've probably seen on TV and books and things. But also it means that it is a little bit cheaper in terms of cost of living. And it also means that you can get that campus environment. So perhaps if you've thought about studying overseas, you might have thought about if you want to be on a campus. And sometimes when you live in a big city, it's more difficult because there isn't enough space. But the great thing about both those universities is that you do have that wonderful campus environment. So if we start with talking about Brunel University is in a place called Uxbridge, which is not too far from Heathrow Airport. So it's on the edge of the city, in the west of the city. It's connected by the underground, so the tube as we call it. So you can get the tube into central London in about 40 minutes. And it's currently ranked 84th in the latest university rankings for the UK. It has an excellent reputation for its programs, but particularly for sports science, for the business school, and for engineering. Certainly within their business school, if you want to, for all of their business programs for undergraduate level, they offer a placement year. And that means that you have the opportunity to actually get some work experience during your studies. So between the second and third year of the degree, you have a chance to go and get work experience. If you're interested in accounting and finance, the programs are CIMA accredited, which is the Chartered Institute of Management Accountancy. And that means that when you graduate, if you are looking then to qualify as an accountant, you already have some exemptions. So that's a really positive thing. If you are looking for those professional qualifications after your degree, it means that during your undergraduate studies, if you study at Brunel, you already have some of those exemptions. If you're a postgraduate student and you're thinking about an MBA program, the MBA programs at Brunel are Amber accredited MBA programs, and that's one of the highest standards that you can have for an MBA. That does mean that you have to have, there are work experience requirements because of that accreditation, but when you graduate with an AACSB or an Amber accredited MBA, it really means a lot to an employer, and it really enhances your employability. So what will it be like if you're a student at Brunel? Well, you'll be living on a large campus on the edge of the town of Uxbridge. Uxbridge has lots of things to do. There's lots of shops, restaurants, places to go out, and a really thriving student community. There are students from all over the world who live and study on the campus. So there's accommodation on the campus. And again, when we talk about September and universities opening up, for most universities, there should still be the option to live on campus, obviously assuming, as I say, that things don't change too much. So you have the opportunity to live there on campus, to really get that student experience and to be with students from all over the world. Brunel also offer a number of scholarships for students. Now, what you'll find in the UK is that most universities do not offer a 100% scholarship. That's quite rare. But you know, typically these could be up to 20%, which is still quite a large portion of your tuition fees. And you may well be eligible to apply for more than one scholarship. It doesn't mean you'll get more than one, but you can at least make applications. And at the end of this, I will send the link so that you can actually have a look at some of those scholarships. But pretty much they range from all kinds of things. Some are sort of nationality specific, some are based on your grade, some are based on things like, are you very talented in sports. There's all kinds of different things that you can get those scholarships for.
Okay, that's really good. So I think we have some comments from the Facebook. So if we can address that. So Shyam Mahatara said, Masters in Nursing separate intake possible for 2021 February intake possible. I think he's asking about is it possible to study Masters of Nursing and February 2021? What do you think, Sam? Is it possible or?
To be honest, I couldn't say specifically about nursing, but on the postgraduate study programs in the UK, most universities are looking at a January start date for 2021. So yeah, so January, I guess February is not too far from that. So they're all looking at that option to run master's programs in January rather than just September, to give people that additional time to make sure they can get to the UK and get their affairs in order and things like that, because of what's been happening in the world. So I would say, although I'm not certain on Masters of Nursing, it is very positive for postgraduate programs that there is now going to be this start date in early 2021.
Okay, so I think that answers your question, Shamji. Thank you so much for putting your comments through. So I have another question from, can I catch up sector intake with UK universities? I think we have partially addressed that question, and I will forward that to Sam again. So what difficulties a student has to attain the September intake, Sam, at the moment? For the universities that are offering.
I think some of the worries for students are things like, if your English language testing centres are not open in your own country, you might be sort of thinking about, how am I going to get my IELTS, for example, if that's something you require. So I think UK universities are really trying to be as flexible as possible with international students to make sure, that they still have that same opportunity to catch up, to make sure they're able to join in September. So for example, at Brunel, they offer the Brunel English test, which is their own English test, which might help students who are worried that that would delay their entry to the UK. Other things are staggered start dates, so a bit more flexibility on when you can start. So for example, if you're due to start at the end of September, you might then have a few additional weeks where you can join the program. Some programs may offer a January start date, and obviously, whilst things are being offered as a blended learning approach with some of the classes or most of the classes available online as well, it does mean that if you are delayed arriving in the UK, hopefully you can start your program perhaps online if you're still at home, and then get yourself to the UK and be able to enjoy that blended learning. So I think this is probably a year where you would see the most flexibility in the UK for international students.
Okay, that's great. So Sanamji said, if I study graduate diploma, can I get post-study work visa? I think if you study degree level programs and you graduate after summer 2021, you will be eligible for post-study work visa. And I think graduate diploma is one to push. What do you think, Sandy?
Yeah, my understanding is it needs to be an undergraduate degree or higher than that to be able to qualify. But again, with anything to do with visa, I would always just err on the side of regular checking with the team in Europe or in Nepal, and just checking those websites, because things change.
Yeah, I think the latest we hear from the UK High Commission is that if you study a graduate diploma, it's more than 9 months course duration, you will be eligible for post-study work visa.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. If it's higher than undergrad, then I would imagine so.
Okay, so Ujjwal Mahato asks, if UK university gives me internship, can I still work part-time 20 hours a week? I think this is still related to immigration. If your course is if your internship is part of the course, then yes, you can do that internship, as long as you can still work 20 hours a week. I think we addressed few questions. So I want to actually send regarding we get a lot of questions regarding the MBA programs. So what are the entry requirements for MBA at Brunel? Is there looking for work experience, or what are the IELTS requirements they will be looking for?
Yeah, with MBA program, it's usually, if it's an AMBER accredited program, which is a particular accreditation, which are some of the best MBAs, then typically you do need to have work experience, and that varies, usually around 5 years work experience, but it does vary, and it depends on the work experience. So it needs to be of a sort of managerial level. So it wouldn't be necessarily enough to have a more junior role. And the reason for that is that when you go to an MBA at somewhere like Brunel, you're bringing your professional experience to the classroom. So your professional experience is actually very important in terms of those discussions that you'll have with other students, and in terms of being able to really get the most out of that program. So I know sometimes people feel a bit nervous about that because they think, oh, it's a long time to wait. But actually that MBA has so much more value to it when you do it somewhere like Brunel, where you need that work experience.
Okay, that's good. So what advice you have for the student from South Asia, or particularly from Nepal? They want to go to study in UK. What advice you have, Sam, before they'll go to study in UK? What kind of things they should be, looking after, and they should be taking care of?
Look, I think it's a fantastic place to be an international student. I think you'll find that life on a university campus in the UK is friendly, welcoming. There's so much going on for international students. So I'd say if you're thinking about coming to the UK, really kind of consider what sort of course you want to study, what kind of campus environment you want to be on, and then once you're actually once you've decided and you know that you're coming to the UK, you can start to think about some of those places that you might want to spend time when you're here, some of the things you might want to experience, and just kind of make the most of that time in university, because it really goes by very, very quickly, particularly if you're a postgraduate student. So if perhaps you know that you might travel a little bit in the UK, maybe think about what that might look like for you before you actually arrive here. In terms of, if you're arriving in the winter, you guys have cold weather anyway, but you can sort of be prepared for what that environment might be like. That we love to talk about the weather, but we do get lots of kind of strange anomalies with the weather in the autumn as well. So just little things like that. So I'd say just read as much as you can about the city that you're going to study in, about the program that you're going to study on. Come with an open mind and be positive, because I'm sure you're going to have an amazing study experience.
Yeah, I think the English is the really must thing. They really need to work really hard on English, I think, because they're going to study in English. If they have to work part-time, it's going to be an English environment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more you can do to improve your English before you arrive, the better. Because even if you reach the required IELTS or the required TOEFL score for your particular program, it's still beneficial to make sure that you're perhaps reading different newspapers so you can understand different styles of English, watching news, soap operas, all those kind of things, films, which will help you to develop those English skills. Because Sushan's right, like if you arrive here and you have really good levels of English, it will help you in terms of finding those part-time jobs and things like that. And just generally, it will probably help you to kind of enhance your study experience. However, I just want to caveat that by saying, if you are worried about your English and you're a little bit nervous, we're all really friendly. Don't be afraid to try out your English on anyone. And if you're at university and you ever feel like you're struggling a little bit, student support and student services at both Roehampton and Brunel, two of our partners, are fantastic. And there will always be someone there who can guide you in terms of getting that additional support. Because I know myself, I've studied overseas in a Chinese-speaking environment, and I know sometimes it can be quite overwhelming when you first arrive.
Okay, some of the students, they ask us regarding the scholarship opportunities in UK. What is the general criteria for universities to get a scholarship, and are they offering like more than 50% scholarship? As you say that 100% is difficult. Is it possible to get at least 50%? What is the requirement for that?
Mm-hmm. It varies from university to university. I know that, for example, on the Brunel website today, they have a whole range of scholarships, and I'll share those links at the end so that you'll be able to have a look. But it really depends. Some of it is based on academic excellence. So if you're a student who has really high scores, you might find that you're eligible for those kind of scholarships, which are just based on your academic achievement. But they are not the only scholarships. So some are very, very specific. So it might be for students from a particular country, or it might be for students from a particular region, or it might be if you're gifted in sports, or if you have a particular talent in something else in your subject area. So there are multiple ways of getting scholarships. It can be quite competitive, so you need to start your research early. If you are looking for scholarships, you need to start that research as early as possible so that you don't miss any deadlines, because the deadlines can vary across the year. Approach the university as well, approach the team at Kangaroo, and I'm sure they can, they'll help to support you in looking for those scholarships. But it does vary. Having said I didn't see any for 100%, I have seen one or two, but they are usually very, very specific and quite tricky to get. Typically, you'll be looking at sort of 20% or perhaps slightly higher. But it's worth doing your research and thinking about what are your special skills and talents that you might be able to apply to those scholarship applications. Make yourself stand out, really.
Yeah, that's great advice, Sean. That's really good. So I think we came to the end of this live session. So if you're just to into the live session, you are into the Kangaroo Education Foundation's Facebook live session. This is a regular live session we do every week. So this week we talk about the education system in UK and what are the things that students should be aware of before going to UK, scholarship opportunities, and we also talk about a lot of things students should know because of this pandemic situation. So I would like to thank Sian Healy from UK. Thank you so much, Sian, for your time. We have an excellent UK department at Kangaroo Education Foundation. So if you have any questions regarding the UK education, and if you want to go to UK, talk to our counselors, and we're happy to assist you, and we're happy to put you to the best university according to your profile. So I would like to end this live session. So I would like to also thank my technical team who is working behind behind the backdrop. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Sam, and thank you so much, everyone, for watching this session. Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.